Several cities across the province have a fresh new look today. As you've been hearing in the news, both Saskatoon and Regina have new mayors and several new councillors. In the Bridge City, former councillor Cynthia Block won the mayor's seat, defeating former Sask Party MLA Gord Wyatt and former Mayor Don Aitchison. In the Queen City, Sask Energy manager Chad Baczynski defeated incumbent Mayor Sandra Masters and 9 other candidates. And to help make sense of these changes in our two biggest cities, we're joined by Phil Tank and Paul Deschênes. Phil is a columnist with the Saskatoon Star-Phoenix, and Paul reports for Prairie Dog Magazine and hosts the Queen City Improvement Bureau podcast series. Good afternoon, Paul.
Hey, how are you doing?
And hello, Phil.
Hey, how are you?
Thank you so much to both of you for being here. Phil, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on Cynthia Block's win?
Yeah, I mean, unlike in Regina, I don't think this was a big surprise to most people. I think when people saw that, Cynthia Block was facing, another former Saskatchewan Party cabinet minister, Rob Norris, ran in 2020 and finished a distant second to Charlie Clark, who's opted not to run again this time. And Don Aitchison was also in that race. So it kind of looked like it was going to be a similar type race from the start, with Cynthia Block capturing the maybe center-left vote and the opposition to her being divvied up 2 or 3 ways. And that's pretty much the way it worked. She got about 45% of the vote. Gord Wyatt got about 30%, Don Aitchison 15%, and another candidate, Kerry Tarasoff, got 10%, who is running for the second time. So unlike Regina, it wasn't a big surprise. I mean, I think this is the way we saw it play out. I kept waiting for something during the campaign that one of the other candidates might pull ahead, but I found Gord Wyatt's campaign fairly uninspiring. And he faced a really tough task because, of course, he's coming directly from the Saskatchewan Party government that just suffered, big losses in the cities, but particularly in Saskatoon, where it was left in, I guess in Regina as well, but it was left with, 1 seat. So that was a really tough thing for him to overcome. And, again, fairly predictable if you looked at it.
Well, shifting to Regina, Paul, Chad Baczynski defeating Sandra Masters and 9 other candidates. Sandra Masters actually came in third after Councillor Laura Bresciani. What are your thoughts on all that?
I was very much staggered by this. I'd actually, I've got it here. I wrote out my guesses before the election.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
And you were almost spot on.
Well, I missed 3, and I had picked Bresciani. I understood that there was this desire for change, electorally here and everywhere. I didn't realize just how much people were eager for something new, and that they would go with somebody, Chad Baczynski, who's incredibly nice, but he has no political experience at all. And
that's 2 in a row now.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Well, I really don't know. I mean, I think with this election, people wanted something new. They wanted they had seen all of the discourse, the sort of problems that were going on at City Council, the scandals, and I think they just wanted somebody completely new. So Lori Bresciani, who had sort of positioned herself in the last few months of council as the change candidate, I don't think she was able to make that case to voters, and so they went with somebody who wasn't just new, but came across your pal, who could heal these rifts on council.
What do we know about Chad Baczynski and his plans? What are you expecting?
I'm not 100% sure. I think he sort of positioned himself as a project manager and engineer, somebody who would look at the processes at council and try to make those work more smoothly and more efficiently. So he positioned himself as kind of like a manager, and perhaps we'll see some of that. I think when he gets there, he's going to realize how limited a mayor's position is compared. I think, right. He was talking about a lot of stuff that administration takes care of. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, Andrew Stevens, former Regina councillor, said on our election special yesterday, a lot of this job is pigeons and squirrels.
How did he mean that? That's
that's what
funny.
people care about, right? Is the little things that maybe you don't anticipate when you're knocking on doorsteps talking about crime and budgets and things like that. Phil, what does Cynthia Block stand for? What do you think people voted for there?
She really had a fairly consistent message of, I wrote a column that's running tomorrow, sort of like, comparing her, like even just the start of her campaign, which was very bright and sunny. It wasn't kind of, doe-eyed or anything like that, but it was just like, we're on the right track. We have a bright future here and that sort of thing. And then on the same day that she launched, Gord Wyatt launched, and it had started to rain by the time Gord Wyatt launched his campaign, and it was in a much darker venue, and it just had this feeling of kind of, a darker sort of vision, which is kind of what you want from outside of City Hall, right? You want to sort of say things aren't going well and it's time for change. But Gord Wyatt used the Saskatoon is broken tagline during his campaign, which we've seen the federal Conservatives use and was used successfully in the Brexit campaign in Britain. I don't think that really resonated with a lot of people, even though, the crime is prevalent here, but it's actually declined this year. So Saskatoon is very different than Regina. Like we generally, I think there's only been 2 mayors in Saskatoon history who have not served on council first.
That's right.
So we never do the let's let this newcomer come, and it's almost always a sitting councillor who wins. The last, I can't even remember. I mean, it's been a string of councillors back to the 60s that have won the mayor's chair. So it's really tough to win. It's even tough. Like we had an incumbent councillor defeated this time, Darren Hill, who'd been there 18 years. And even that's really unusual for Saskatoon for an incumbent to fall.
Before I come back to Paul and Regina, Phil, obviously, Chad Baczynski here in Regina is going to have a learning curve. I just talked to Prince Albert's new mayor, who also has never served, in City Hall before, so that'll be a new experience for him as well. But with Cynthia Block having been on council, what other challenges might she face?
Well, she said election night when our results rolled in around midnight after Regina's had been known for hours for some reason. Anyway, she said she thought this was voters opting for hope and her positive vision as opposed to all the negativity out there. And there was lots of negativity towards her in this campaign, not just from the other candidates, but from these online anonymous entities that are out there, that aren't identifying themselves but are spending thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. But then she also said her top priority when she takes office is going to be homelessness. I thought, well, good luck maintaining that positive outlook if you're going to try to tackle homelessness, because it's a really difficult thing to, and everyone was talking about homelessness. Don Atchison had this plan for 3D printed trailers to house the homeless. Cynthia Block's plan was, she said from the very beginning, she wants a task force on homelessness to bring everybody together, and that's kind of what people sided with.
Paul, I mean, you've been doing this for a while, and City Council in Regina has been a bit chaotic, if I may say. What do you see when you look at the whole council that is coming in?
Oh my gosh, so many new people. So we're getting 8 new councillors, a new mayor. We only have two legacy councillors, one of whom she's only got 1 term under her belt. Jason Mancinelli's been around a bit longer. This is going to make the transition a lot harder. Like the clerk's office is going to have to do so much hand-holding to get through the start of this council term. But they also seem to be enthusiastic, so that fills me with hope. So,
well, what's that? Anybody on the council that catches your eye? Coming or going?
Yeah. So I think a couple names that are really important, I think, are Victoria Flores and Shabna Radons. They are the first 2, as far as I know, people of color on council. This has never happened before. And so this is a big step forward for diversity and just, getting voices from other communities onto council to bring those issues forward and those different perspectives. So I think that's really important. Got
a bit of a niche Regina question, but the pool has just been all anybody's talking about. Where do you think that goes from here?
So this became like a flashpoint in this election, and
Absolutely.
It was like the sort of center of what these outside groups, Advanced Regina, Common Sense Regina, were pointing to as we want to get rid of that. the people they were endorsing were running away from that endorsement by the end. I think that position is very unpopular. I think most of the people on council have come out and said that they actually provisionally support it. There's only going to be a couple voices who are like stridently opposed to continuing with it. This project is really well along the way. I think it would be very hard to sort of turn that ship at this point. So, and I think it would be very unpopular because it would cost a ton of money to change it. And I think that once the politicians who said, we have to stop this, get in and see the ramifications of changing a decision that huge, I think they're going to wake up to the fact that this would not work out.
Phil, the very limited city council coverage I've done in my career was in Saskatoon, and I remember just thinking how big some of the personalities were on council. You had people that were there for a long time, people that really cared, obviously. What do you see when you look at the new council? Because there has been turnover in the past few elections.
Yeah, and almost all the turnover in Saskatoon comes from retiring councillors. We had 5 open vacant spots this time, which is extremely unusual for Saskatoon. A bunch of people decided they were going to leave at the same time. So we also have elected our first visible minority in I'm going to hope I get the pronunciation right, Sinos Tiemann, in one of the vacant wards. He won handily. We lose Darren Hill, who was very outspoken, very active on social media, or less so in the last few years, but. He definitely had his detractors, but I think he was a very valuable voice on council. So it's kind of to be determined. 6 new councillors is very unusual here. We had 2 councillors who were acclaimed. One of the new councillors is a Baptist pastor who Robert Pierce, who narrowly won his ward, and he built his candidacy on opposition to a homeless shelter in a neighborhood here in Saskatoon, Fairhaven. So it's a provincial facility in a provincial building. So it'll be interesting to see, what he tries to do at council to try to address that. It's been a big discussion point. Crime has risen in the area, although again it's down this year, like it is in most of the city. So that's kind of one of the things I'm looking forward to. And it's tough to say from the new ones, right? Like only one of them, Catherine McDonald, is the one who defeated Darren Hill, who placed 3rd in that ward. So. She obviously ran a good campaign. I saw her remember her from the very beginning and thinking, wow, this is a good candidate that people might overlook. And obviously she had a good ground game because she won.
Paul, I want to ask you about public school board trustees, not something we normally get into the weeds to. And I don't know how much you obviously know about each specific, but RCAN, the Regina Civic Action Awareness Network, really came out, had candidates running for school board trustees. They all were shut down. Yeah. What do you make of that?
I think their message was extremely unpopular. You saw very early on when RCAN started to make endorsements that a lot of people, again, this was like the touch of a plague rat. Like these candidates were running away from that, saying it had nothing to do with this. Not all of them, but most of them did. And I think the vote was clear, right? Like the people who were not supported by RCAN, they won their ridings or their subdivisions, by like 60, 70. Adam Hicks won it by like 85%. Mm-hmm. So this was decisive. And it just said this is not a message, I think, that Reginans are willing to listen to.
And do you think it kind of, I'm trying to think of the proper term for this, it definitely worked against them, I think, their plan, because I don't remember a time when so many people were educated on public school board trustees.
Yeah. And in a way, I think that people were paying more attention to that public school race than they were to the council race. Certainly the people that I spoke to, that was what they were the most passionate about, which is hard for me because I'm not super up on what's going on at school board.
Sure.
I think it's interesting that level of government, like school board, they don't have a lot of power, right? Like they're basically implementing the provincial agenda. And so it was interesting that this became the controversial position, even though they don't have a lot of power to sort of affect curriculum or to affect what's going on in the classroom.
Phil, before I let you both go, what happened? How are you feeling with those delayed results in Saskatoon last night? You were doing a great job on our election special with Charles Hamilton.
It took a long time. I don't even want to speculate at this stage because I heard different things. I heard that it was like they let a poll stay open, and the first hard drive they were trying to download was too heavy. But it's kind of strange when we know the results from Prince Albert and Regina and everywhere else. I just wanted to mention that we had 5 school board trustees acclaimed here, so there wasn't the same sort of pressure that there was. We definitely had a group trying to influence the city council election and the mayor's race, but I feel a little like George Costanza in the episode where he doesn't understand why the cult doesn't try to try to co-opt him when they've co-opted one of his employers, because we just didn't get as much of it. It wasn't as concentrated. It wasn't as directed as it was in Regina. So I guess for whatever reason, they decided we weren't worth the effort.
The office cleaners. I love a good Seinfeld reference. And Phil, we'll leave it at that. Paul, Phil, thank you so much to both of you.
Thanks a lot for having me on.
Thanks for having me.